There's been mud on my soul, there's been anger inside me, there's still unforgiven deeds that now it's time to free. I've been trapped inside so long, don't remember how to live, how much of life has passed me by as I slept inside my dreams. Oh yes, sip the waters too, let them wash all over you. Here you are at last, free yourself from past and walk into the new. Be guided by what's true, causing no one harm, least of all. Om Namah Shivaya Gurave Sat-Chit-Anand Murtaye Nishprapanchaya Shantaya Niralambaya Tejase.
Satyam Shivam Sundaram Sansarasaram Abhayankaram Dukhaharam Karunavataram Jyotirmayam Swayambhu Prakritistudaram Shivasmarami Jagat Swami Nirvikaram.
Om Shanti. The Vedic scriptures describe many deities, and one of the most powerful deity who is described is Indra. In the post-Vedic scriptures, it is shown that he loses his importance because in those periods there is prominence of other deities. Indra is shown to be extremely powerful, but at the same time he has been shown to be drunk with the pride of power, adulterous, hedonistic, and most of the times he gets into trouble and he has to rush here and there. There are many things associated with Indra, and one of the things which is described is the court of Indra, Indra Sabha. And we have often heard this word in Sakar Murlis. There is beautiful depiction of this court. Who used to be present in this court? Supernatural beings, rishis, sages, seers, celestial nymphs, apsaras, and so on. And this court is said to be extremely pure. No impure being can enter into this court. The celestial nymphs or apsaras are said to be extremely pure, virgins. And Indra used to send them to earth to disrupt the penance of yogis. And as a result of that, many times those celestial nymphs had to become the target of curse. They would be cursed to become stones or some animal. So today we'll see something about this court of Indra. Indra is the god of rain, rainwater, war. He has a weapon called Vajra, thunderbolt with him. and many other things are shown. His bow and arrow are also quite famous. Indra Dhanush, that is said to be the bow of Indra, which has got 7 colors. So this court is very pure. An ordinary human being cannot enter into this court. It is also shown in the scriptures that Indra is the king of heaven, and without his permission, nobody can enter the heaven. There have been attempts to enter heaven, but when he doesn't permit, the result was disastrous. One of the examples is Trishankhu, who tried to enter the heaven but was thrown down, was hurled out of the heaven. So in what context Baba uses this phrase, Indra Sabha? We all know that once there was a fairy. She brought a human being from the earth into this court, and all the other deities who were present there, they had a bad smell. Some person with vices has entered this court, and ultimately it was spotted that this fairy had brought a human being, and they both, the fairy and that human being, they both were thrown out of the heaven, and they both were cursed to become a stone. It's a mythological story, but symbolic of things happening in the confluence age. Baba says, Baba's house, Baba's home is Indra Sabha, and God is Indra himself. So no impure being can come into this court. Madhuban is the Indra Sabha. That's why there were strict jurisdiction. There were strict laws earlier. Unless and until you complete 1 year of strict celibacy and all the dharnas, you cannot step into this land of Madhuban, because this is Indra Sabha. And inside the Madhuban, everything is the part of that court. Baba's hut is an Indra Sabha. No impure being can, should enter that place. Baba's room is an Indra Sabha. The history hall is an Indra Sabha. The Shanti Stambh, the Tower of Peace, is an Indra Sabha. So the criteria to enter the Indra Sabha is purity. Complete purity, utmost purity. Center, Madhuban, is an Indra Sabha. The center, Baba's center, they are also Indra Sabha. First complete the course, start the dharnas, understand the dharnas, understand the depth of purity, and then enter this court. The subtle world is also an Indra Sabha. It's very pure. It's the land of angels. So that angelic land is also an Indra Sabha. Even if you want, even if you wish, you cannot enter it. Because the very criteria to enter the subtle world is the requirement of the subtle body. And you cannot experience subtle body without the power of brahmacharya. With that gross body consciousness, how can you experience that which is so subtle? Soul is the subtlest thing, and purity is the part of that soul. The more you become soul conscious, the more pure you become. The more pure you become, the more you achieve soul consciousness. The supreme abode, Paramdham, is also Indra Sabha. That is the Indra Sabha of the highest order. If you want to experience the soul world, if you want to experience that super sensuous, that super null, that super natural, that superfluous joy, bliss, rapture, without purity, you cannot. Golden age is also an Indra Sabha. Without that dharana of purity, you cannot enter golden age. So Baba mentions Indra Sabha more in regards to Madhuban rather than all other things. The thing is, why this purity is so important? And what is this purity? Imagine a house. This is a house well furnished with furnitures. Windows are beautiful, curtains are beauteous. The walls are aristocratic. Everything is so beautiful about this room. And then suddenly, one person comes into this room. He sits on the sofa. There is a dip, and the creases are formed. There is another person who enters the room. He ons the music. The third person comes into this room. He takes one thing from one place and puts it at another place. The fourth, the fifth, the sixth, the seventh. It is going to be a party. Things become scattered. The clothes get stained. The floor is no more clean. The windows are open and the bad odors enter the room. The fan is on and things are flung here and there. It is a party. And then the hostess comes in. But it's too late. Her lack of vigilance has taken the toll. Everything has become disturbed. This is the story of purity. This is the story of purity. The soul comes on this planet Earth. It's very pure. Everything is so beautiful, so original, so pristine. And then somebody enters, the first guest, and the purity is disturbed. The soul is influenced. The second guest, the third guest, the fourth guest. It's going to be a party, but the party of destruction, the party of attachment, lust, misery, gloom, greed, suffering, anger, avarice, ego. And the atmosphere is polluted. The air has become adulterated. It's a party. There's a loud music. The melody is lost and replaced by cacophony, bitter noise. And this is the story of soul. And this is the story of invasion of Ravan. And this is the story of assault. Now, what is the treatment? How to restore the original purity? The treatment is invitation to the Supreme. The treatment is invite the Supreme Guest. He is the Supreme Cleaner. Invitation to the supreme strength. The supreme power enters the room and the cleaning work starts. The floor needs cleaning. The windows needs cleaning. The windows need cleaning. The walls need cleaning. The dustbins are full. They need to be thrown out. The basins are clogged. Plumber is needed. The paints have become faint. A painter is needed. Interior design is disturbed. An architect is required. An interior designer is required. That is the story of purity. A teacher is needed to teach them the decorum, the etiquettes, the pure manner of living. So when God enters our lives, He is the ocean of purity. He teaches us the chapters of purity. Chapter 1, purity of body. Chapter 2, purity of mind. Chapter 3, purity of heart. Chapter 4, purity of relationship. Last Sunday's Murli. Cleanliness. He teaches us chapters of purity. He brings with him the book of purity, the great volume of purity. He is the sermonizer of Gita, yesterday's Sakar Murli. There is a sermon of Jesus Christ on the Mount Sinai. This is the sermon of God Shiva on the Mount of Abu. So the book of purity, when we start reading, we start imbibing the purity. The more pure we become, the lighter we feel. Purity of eyes, purity of tongue, purity of nose, purity of ear, purity of skin. Eyes or the sight is purified with soul consciousness. Tongue is purified. It goes beyond the captivity of taste. Tongue has been in hostage. Taste freedom. There is a prison of smell, fragrance. Senses go beyond that. Freedom of senses is purity. Ears, they are attracted to beautiful sounds and they repel unmelodious sounds. There is equanimity. Skin is unirritated, unexcited, unagitated, unaroused by touch. So purity is to achieve complete control of senses. Purity is to keep the room clean. Purity is to keep the body clean. Purity is not to allow anything foreign into the system. Purity is to remain uninfluenced, undisturbed, untouched, unintact. No external influence disturbs my concentration. Purity is concentration. Purity is self-reliance. Purity is self-sovereignty. Purity is absolute self-control. Purity is vicelessness. So Baba says, when you become pure, Your feelings become pure. Your desires become pure. Your vrittis become pure. Your dreams become pure. Your thoughts become pure. Your emotions become pure. They don't have the trace of vices. Then you become eligible to enter the Indra Sabha. Otherwise, you cannot enter. If you try to enter without purity, the result would be curse. What is the curse? It is shown that Rambha tried to seduce Vishwamitra and he cursed her to become a stone for 10,000 years. So to become stone means what? The fairy, the pari, the nymph, she became a stone. Stone means who cannot speak. You can speak worldly knowledge, but then you are not entitled to speak spiritual knowledge. That is the meaning of becoming a stone. If you enter the Indra Sabha, the court of Indra, with hidden impurity, you will turn into a stone. You can become an intellectual person in the world. You can give scientific knowledge. You can do discoveries in the world, in the material world, in the mundane world. But in the spiritual world, you lose the power to speak. Your speech will not have that ring of purity. That is the result of entering this court of Indra. So Madhuban is the court of Indra. History Hall is the court of Indra. Shanti Stambh is the court of Indra. Baba's room, Baba's hut, Diamond Hall, all the places of Yajna, the center is the court of Indra. And those who are staying in that, they are doubly responsible. If these rules are for those who are entering, they are not entitled. What about those who stay? The rules must be stricter for them. So extreme purity. The intense love for purity. In yesterday's Murli, there was one statement. Kumari says, yesterday's Sakar Murli, one Kumari says, I will not marry. From where that statement comes? That statement comes from that intense faith, that intense love for purity, or those original sanskars of the soul are of purity. And the soul is not at all ready to compromise, because compromise in purity is death. Compromise in purity is death. So be pure and enter the court of Indra. You will be welcomed by God Himself. He is standing at the door with a garland in His hand. So also the gates of Madhuban. With purity will come confidence. Purity is confidence. When you are impure, there are doubts. When you are impure, there is suspicion. When there is impurity, there is fear. When there is impurity, there is insecurity. You feel defenseless, armless. And with purity, you become almighty authority. Almost very powerful. So purity is strength. Purity is courage. Purity is fearlessness. Purity is intrepidity. Intrepid nature. Purity is the supreme power. Om Shanti.